Most crime stories begin with a powerful man making a careful plan. The Penguin begins with a desperate man making one stupid, emotional decision and then surviving it through nerve, cruelty, and astonishing improvisation. That difference matters because Oz Cobb isn't introduced as Gotham's future king. He's introduced as a middle-ranking gangster standing in the ruins of somebody else's empire, nursing a lifetime of humiliation and waiting for one opening. Across 8 episodes, the series turns that opening into a war. It follows Oz as he lies to the Falcones, bargains with the Maronis, recruits a frightened teenager, manipulates his own mother, and destroys almost everyone who gets close enough to believe him. But the real trick is that the show lets us understand him before it proves that understanding him was never the same as excusing him. The story begins only days after the ending of The Batman. The Riddler's attack has broken Gotham's seawall, flooded poor neighborhoods, and left the city in a state of panic. Carmine Falcone is dead. His organization still has money, soldiers, and political influence, but it no longer has a center. Every ambitious figure can feel the vacuum. The Falcone family assumes power will pass through blood. Rival gangs see a chance to recover territory. Oz sees something more personal. He sees the first moment in his life when the people above him might finally be weak enough to replace. That's the essential meaning of the ruined Iceberg Lounge. In The Batman, the club represented Carmine's reach. It was glamorous on the surface, rotten underneath, and protected by men like Oz who were useful but never respected. Now the place is dark, damaged, and half abandoned. Oz enters not as an owner but as a scavenger. He searches Carmine's private space and collects valuables, jewels, and blackmail material. He's stealing from a dead boss, yet he carries himself like a man claiming unpaid wages. In his mind, the family owes him. He served them, made them money, absorbed their insults, and waited. What he never received was dignity. Then Alberto Falcone walks in. Alberto is Carmine's son, the man everyone expects to inherit the criminal empire. He's unstable, entitled, and convinced that his surname is enough to make other people obey. At first, Oz talks his way out of being caught. That's his greatest weapon. He reads insecurity quickly, mirrors whatever the other person wants to hear, and turns confrontation into conversation. Soon they're drinking together, and Alberto reveals that he has access to a new drug that could replace drops and transform the family business. For Oz, this is valuable information, but the conversation becomes dangerous when he starts talking about the kind of gangster he wants to become. He remembers Rex Calabrese, an old neighborhood figure who was respected because ordinary people felt he gave something back. Oz doesn't merely want wealth, he wants a funeral crowded with people who believe he mattered. Beneath all the violence, that hunger drives almost everything he does. He wants Gotham to love him. Alberto laughs. It's a small act, but it tears through years of resentment. Oz shoots him before strategy can catch up with emotion. In a single second, he kills the heir to Gotham's most powerful crime family and places himself at the center of a murder that could get him tortured, dismembered, and erased. This is where the series makes its first promise. Oz isn't a master planner who controls every variable. He's a compulsive survivor. His plans are built after the disaster, not before it. While trying to move Alberto's body, Oz catches a group of teenagers stealing the rims from his purple Maserati. The others run, but Victor Aguilar is left behind. Victor is young, frightened, and living in a city that has already taken almost everything from him. The flood devastated Crown Point, the working-class neighborhood where he lived with his family. He has no position in Gotham's power structure and no believable path into one. Oz could kill him. Instead, he notices Victor's stutter and senses a familiar vulnerability. Their connection begins as coercion. Oz forces Victor to drive, carry the body, and help clean up his mistake. Yet he also talks to him with a strange mixture of threat and warmth. He humiliates Victor, then protects him. He frightens him, then offers food. This unstable rhythm becomes the emotional engine of the series. Victor begins as an unwilling witness, but Oz gradually gives him something the flooded city no longer can: a role. The danger is that every role Oz offers comes with ownership attached. By morning, Alberto's body has been hidden, and Oz has taken a ring from his hand. The ring once belonged to Salvatore Maroni, the rival mob boss Carmine Falcone defeated and sent to prison. That detail gives Oz the beginning of a cover story. If Alberto's murder can be made to look like Maroni revenge, then suspicion will move away from him and toward an old gang war. But before he can complete the deception, the Falcone organization reminds him how little power he actually has. Johnny Vitti tells Oz that his drops operation is being moved out of the city. Oz protests because the operation is more than a business assignment. It's his base, his reputation, and the closest thing he has to territory. He tries to sell Alberto's new drug idea as his own, but Sofia Falcone's arrival changes the room. Sofia has recently been released from Arkham. Gotham knows her as the Hangman, a serial killer from one of the city's most infamous families. But from the moment she appears, the series signals that the public story about her may not be the whole truth. She watches people rather than simply reacting to them. She recognizes weakness, false sympathy, and rehearsed loyalty. Most importantly, she knows her brother, and she doesn't believe he disappeared without leaving a trace. Oz tries to charm her. It doesn't work. Sofia's suspicion becomes more dangerous after one of Victor's friends is captured. The boy can connect Oz to the night Alberto vanished. Oz is taken to the Falcone estate, stripped of control, and tortured while Sofia demands the truth. This is the first direct contest between the series' two central players. Sofia has the power, the family name, and the correct instinct. Oz has nothing except his ability to lie under pressure. He sacrifices the captured boy without hesitation. He knows that if he admits anything, he dies. If someone else dies while he maintains the lie, that's simply the cost of continuing. This is one of the earliest signs that the warmth Oz shows Victor can't be trusted. He may feel affection. He may even believe he's loyal. But when survival and loyalty collide, survival wins. Then Oz's backup plan arrives through the gates. A car crashes into the Falcone property. Alberto's corpse is found in the trunk, his finger cut off and a message of payback pointing toward Maroni. Victor has completed the setup exactly when Oz needs it. Sofia's certainty is disrupted, the family's attention shifts, and Oz walks away from a murder he committed in anger by transforming it into the opening move of a gang war. Afterward, Oz and Victor share slushies like two men finishing an ordinary night shift. The scene is funny, unsettling, and completely honest about who Oz is. He can endure torture, arrange a corpse, condemn a teenager to death, and then return immediately to the fantasy that he's building something meaningful. He invites Victor to join him in taking over the city. Victor accepts, partly because he's afraid, partly because he has nowhere else to go, and partly because Oz has made him feel seen. That is the first step in Oz Cobb's rise. Not a victory built on strength, but a disaster converted into opportunity. He has killed Alberto, framed Maroni, misled Sofia, and gained a young accomplice. Yet every solution creates a larger threat. The Maronis will not enjoy being used. The Falcones will eventually notice the traitor inside their organization. And Sofia, unlike almost everyone else around Oz, has already looked through the performance and sensed the truth. The question is no longer whether Oz can keep lying. It's how many people he can turn against one another before one of them finally forces him to reveal what he really is. Oz has escaped Sofia's interrogation, but surviving one night doesn't solve the central problem. Alberto Falcone is still dead, the Maronis have been blamed, and both families now expect Oz to prove where his loyalty lies. He can't simply hide while they destroy one another. To benefit from the war, he has to stand close enough to influence both sides without allowing either side to realize that he started it. His next move takes him to Blackgate Penitentiary, where Salvatore Maroni remains imprisoned. Oz returns the ring taken from Alberto's body, presenting it as a gesture of respect. The ring once represented Carmine Falcone's victory over Maroni. By placing it back in Sal's hands, Oz offers him the emotional satisfaction of appearing responsible for the Falcone heir's death, even though Sal had nothing to do with it. But Sal isn't grateful. From his perspective, Oz has used the Maroni name to trigger a conflict without permission. Alberto's murder may embarrass the Falcones, but it also puts Maroni's soldiers and relatives in danger. Oz tries to reframe the situation. Carmine is gone. Alberto is gone. The Falcone organization is vulnerable. Instead of rejecting the lie, Sal can claim the victory and use the confusion to recover everything Carmine stole from him. This is classic Oz. He creates a crisis and then sells himself as the only man capable of converting it into an opportunity. The Falcone family is already reorganizing. Carmine's brother, Luca, arrives to assume control, while Johnny Vitti continues protecting his own position beneath him. Neither man treats Sofia as a serious contender. Her history in Arkham makes her inconvenient, and Alberto's death removes the one relative who truly welcomed her back. The men tell themselves that excluding her is responsible leadership. In reality, they're repeating the same pattern that has defined Sofia's life, making decisions about her while refusing to listen to her. Sofia suspects that Alberto's death involved an insider. The body was delivered directly to the Falcone estate, and the apparent Maroni message feels too convenient. Someone understands the family's routines, weaknesses, and reactions. Oz knows that her instinct is correct, which makes her more dangerous than Luca or Vitti. The men with the highest ranks are focused on preserving the organization they inherited. Sofia is focused on discovering who is lying. Oz encourages the Maronis to attack a shipment of drops being moved out of Gotham. The robbery serves several purposes at once. It damages the Falcones financially, proves Oz's usefulness to Sal, and creates evidence that someone inside the Falcone operation is leaking information. Oz intends to shape that suspicion and direct it toward Johnny Vitti. The plan immediately becomes more dangerous when Vitti orders Oz to ride with the shipment rather than follow behind it. Once again, Oz is trapped inside his own scheme. The Maronis attack as arranged, but they don't know Oz has been placed directly in the line of fire. He scrambles through the ambush, trying to survive without exposing his connection to the attackers. The scene reveals why he remains effective despite his lack of discipline. When controlled plans collapse, Oz becomes more focused. Panic doesn't freeze him, it sharpens him. The robbery succeeds, but one of the Maroni men, Ervad, is wounded and later taken from the hospital by a detective working for Sofia. If Ervad talks, he can expose Oz as the source of the shipment information. The Maronis know this too. Nadia Maroni, Sal's wife and a powerful operator in her own right, confronts Oz. She doesn't share her husband's interest in symbolic gestures. She wants results, and Oz's value is disappearing quickly. To keep himself alive, Oz produces another weapon. Photographs proving that Johnny Vitti is having an affair with Luca Falcone's wife. Oz originally found the photographs among Carmine's private material. They aren't merely embarrassing. Inside a criminal dynasty built on loyalty and blood, they could turn the leadership against itself. Oz promises to recover Ervad and frame Vitti as the Falcone traitor. Victor is given the most important assignment of his new criminal life. He must plant stolen jewels in Vitti's car. Combined with Ervad naming Vitti, the jewels will make it appear that Vitti helped arrange Alberto's murder and the shipment robbery. Victor has already helped move a corpse, but this requires a different kind of courage. He must enter enemy territory, remain unnoticed, and complete a task while armed men move around him. At Alberto's memorial, the Falcone family performs unity for Gotham's elite. Grief becomes a public ritual, and reputation matters more than truth. Sofia is expected to remain controlled while relatives who barely respected Alberto speak about family loyalty. Her isolation is visible even in a crowded room. She is surrounded by people carrying her name, yet almost none of them treat her as if she belongs there. Oz moves through the event playing several roles. To Luca and Viti, he's a useful subordinate. To Sofia, he's a possible ally. To the Maronis, he's their man inside the Falcone organization. To Victor, he's a boss who claims to be offering a future. Every relationship depends on a different lie, and all of those lies are now operating in the same building. Victor reaches Viti's car but is spotted before he can plant the jewels. His failure removes the foundation of Oz's plan. Oz can no longer safely force Ervad to accuse Viti because there will be no physical evidence to support the claim. Worse, the Falcone estate is locked down while Sofia and her bodyguard, Castillo, interrogate the captive Maroni soldier in the basement. Oz has only minutes to improvise. He reaches Ervad and pretends he is there to help. Ervad expects Oz to rescue him, but Oz knows that a living witness is now more dangerous than a dead ally. He kills Ervad, silencing the only man in the house who can expose him. Then Oz creates a confrontation with Viti, knowing Castillo will step between them. During the struggle, he secretly plants the murder weapon on Sofia's bodyguard. When the family searches the estate, the evidence points toward Castillo. The jewels are found among his belongings, and the weapon connects him to Ervad's death. Luca executes him, believing he has eliminated the traitor responsible for helping the Maronis and betraying the family. The brilliance of Oz's solution isn't that he proves an innocent man guilty. It's that he chooses the victim whose death gives him the greatest advantage. Castillo is Sofia's most trusted protector. By framing him, Oz doesn't just redirect suspicion. He removes the one person standing closest to Sofia and leaves her even more isolated. That's how Oz builds dependence. He rarely begins by offering help. First, he quietly destroys the alternatives. Victor's mistake has forced Oz to kill 2 men and redesign the entire frame-up, but Oz doesn't treat the failure as a minor lesson. Later, he makes Victor dig a grave for Ervad and Castillo. Then he orders him to lie down beside the bodies. Victor stares upward from the dirt while Oz explains what happens to people who lose focus in their world. The moment reveals the darker side of their developing bond. Oz recognizes Victor's fear because he has spent his own life being underestimated and threatened. But instead of protecting Victor from that experience, he reproduces it. He wants the boy to become harder, more useful, and more like him. What Oz calls teaching is also domination. Still, Victor doesn't leave. The money, danger, and attention are drawing him deeper. Oz has become both the source of his terror and the person offering him a way out of powerlessness. That contradiction will become increasingly important. Victor isn't simply trapped by physical threats. He's beginning to believe that staying with Oz might allow him to become someone Gotham can't ignore. Sofia is also drawn closer. With Castillo dead and her family dismissing her suspicions, Oz presents himself as the rare person who respects her instincts. She knows he's ambitious. She knows he's manipulative. But she also sees that he understands the family business better than the men now controlling it. Sofia reveals that Alberto had been helping her develop a new narcotics operation, one that could transform Gotham's drug market. With Alberto gone, she needs someone who can handle distribution, negotiate with rival organizations, and navigate the city's streets. Oz needs a business powerful enough to free him from serving the old Falcone hierarchy. Their partnership is born from mutual usefulness rather than trust. For Oz, working with Sofia offers access to the product Alberto described before his death. It also places him beside the person most likely to uncover his guilt. Keeping Sofia close may be the safest way to control what she learns. For Sofia, Oz is a weapon the family has never properly valued. She believes she can aim his ambition at the men trying to push her aside. Both think they understand the arrangement. Both think they're using the other. But Sofia doesn't yet know that the man standing beside her murdered Alberto, framed her bodyguard, and helped create the war threatening her family. And Oz doesn't yet understand that Sofia's anger runs far deeper than a dispute over leadership. The new drug may give them enough power to challenge the Falcones, but building that empire will force them to confront the buried history connecting them. Because Oz and Sofia didn't meet for the first time after Arkham. Years earlier, when she still trusted him as her driver, Oz made another choice that changed both of their lives. The consequences of that betrayal are now moving back toward the surface. Before Victor Aguilar became Oz Cobb's driver, he was an ordinary teenager trying to imagine a future beyond Crown Point. His father worked hard, believed in honest labor, and expected Victor to value the modest life their family had built. Victor loved them, but part of him wanted more. He looked across Gotham and saw people occupying expensive restaurants, driving beautiful cars, and moving through the city as if every door had been built for them. He didn't know how to reach that world. He only knew that remaining where he was felt like accepting a life chosen in advance. Then the Riddler destroyed the seawall. Victor was on a rooftop with his girlfriend, Graciela, when explosions ripped through Gotham. From that distance, the disaster initially looked unreal, like flashes from a storm. Then the water entered Crown Point. Streets disappeared, buildings were overwhelmed, and Victor's family was lost before he could reach them. This flashback changes how we understand his relationship with Oz. Victor isn't merely an innocent teenager being forced into crime. He's a traumatized survivor whose old identity vanished in the flood. His home, family, routine, and sense of direction were all taken at once. Oz found him during that vulnerable period and offered him a new structure. It was violent and dangerous, but it was still a structure. Now, Victor lives in Oz's apartment, carries his money, drives his car, and watches a criminal empire being assembled around him. He's closer to the powerful world he once imagined, yet he has never been less secure. Oz and Sofia begin turning Alberto's drug project into a real operation. Sofia brings Oz to a hidden laboratory where mushrooms are cultivated for their spores. The resulting narcotic was connected to her experiences in Arkham, where patients were drugged into states of artificial calm. Sofia transforms something associated with her imprisonment into a possible source of power. Oz gives the drug its marketable name, Bliss. The name captures the promise being sold to Gotham. The city is flooded, grieving, and politically unstable. Entire neighborhoods have been neglected while wealthy families continue protecting their own interests. People don't need to be convinced that reality is painful. Bliss offers them temporary escape from it. For Sofia, the product is also a way to complete the future she believed she was building with Alberto. She insists the operation was genuinely theirs, though Oz originally assumed Alberto had created the plan alone. That misunderstanding reveals how easily even Oz has underestimated her. He has viewed Sofia primarily as a wounded heir he can manipulate. Now he realizes she has access to resources, scientific expertise, and a vision that could replace the Falcone family's declining drops business. But producing a drug and controlling a market are different problems. They need distributors independent of the Falcones, which leads them toward Gotham's triads. Sofia's position inside her own family is collapsing at the same time. Johnny Vitti makes it clear that Luca and the other leaders want her gone. He presents her with a ticket to Italy, disguising exile as an opportunity to rest. The message underneath is unmistakable. They consider Sofia unstable, inconvenient, and politically dangerous. Alberto's death has removed her protection, and the Falcone men want her outside Gotham before she disrupts their succession plans. Their dismissal only strengthens her determination. Sofia isn't asking for permission to participate anymore. If the family refuses to give her power, she will build something that makes their approval irrelevant. Oz arranges contact with Link Sai, a triad lieutenant willing to consider their proposal. The meeting immediately exposes the weakness in Oz and Sofia's partnership. They need the triads to believe their operation has protection from inside the Falcone hierarchy. Without that protection, Bliss looks like a temporary rebellion that will be crushed as soon as Luca discovers it. Oz responds with a lie. He claims Johnny Vitti supports their plan, Sofia has no warning that he will use Viti's name, but she follows his performance because challenging him in front of the triads would destroy the deal. This is what makes Oz useful and infuriating. He will create a bridge while everyone else is still discussing how to cross the river. But he often builds that bridge out of material stolen from the people standing beside him. The triads agree to observe a test. If Bliss proves popular and Oz can demonstrate genuine protection, they may distribute it across the city. While Oz and Sofia negotiate, Victor waits outside with samples of the drug. A police officer approaches the car and begins questioning him. Victor is terrified, but instead of collapsing, he improvises. He uses the cash Oz gave him to bribe the officer and avoids a search that could have ended the entire operation. Oz is impressed. Victor has finally solved a problem without direct instruction. That moment matters because Oz's approval is becoming psychologically important to him. Oz doesn't simply pay Victor. He notices his successes, challenges his insecurity, and offers access to places Victor previously observed only from the outside. During a meal at an expensive restaurant, Victor's discomfort is obvious. He sits as if someone may realize he doesn't belong and remove him. Oz tells him to take up space. It sounds empowering because Oz understands exactly what Victor feels. He knows what it's like to enter a room where wealth, physical appearance, or social status marks a person as inferior. Oz has spent his life refusing to shrink for people who expected him to apologize for being present. But Oz's lesson carries a hidden poison. He teaches Victor that respect isn't something to earn through character. It's something to seize through money, fear, and the willingness to ignore anyone who says no. He isn't helping Victor rebuild the person he was before the flood. He is teaching him to replace grief with ambition. Graciela represents the other possible path. When Victor reconnects with her, she explains that she plans to leave Gotham for California. Staying means remaining surrounded by reminders of the disaster and waiting for a city that has already abandoned them to become livable again. She asks Victor to go with her. At first, he hides what he has been doing. He describes Oz as a club owner and makes his work sound legitimate. Eventually, however, he admits that he's trapped in something dangerous. Graciela recognizes that leaving Gotham may be his only chance to escape Oz's influence before it becomes permanent. Victor gives her money for a ticket and promises to meet her at the bus station. For a brief period, he seems ready to choose freedom. Meanwhile, the Bliss test becomes a success. Samples move through a crowded nightclub, and the drug produces the reaction Oz and Sofia hoped for. People become euphoric, open, and desperate for more. The triads can see the financial potential. The old Falcone product belongs to the previous generation. Bliss feels new, exclusive, and perfectly suited to a traumatized city. Yet, the environment triggers Victor's memories. The music, flashing lights, and crowded room overwhelm him. The nightclub disappears in his mind, replaced by the rooftop, the explosions, and the water-swallowing Crown Point. He retreats to a bathroom while Graciela's messages remind him that the bus will leave soon. Oz discovers the plan. His reaction is more emotional than practical. He has known Victor for only a short time, but he treats the decision to leave as a personal betrayal. Oz insists that he has given Victor an opportunity. He tells the boy that Graciela's path offers nothing but continued poverty and invisibility. When Victor says he feels trapped, Oz points a gun at him. For a moment, the truth of their relationship becomes impossible to ignore. Oz may speak like a mentor, but their partnership began with a death threat, and violence still waits beneath every expression of affection. Then Oz lets him go. It's partly pride. Oz refuses to admit that he needs someone who doesn't freely choose him. It may also be a calculated gamble. He understands Victor's hunger for significance and believes the boy will discover that escaping with Graciela feels smaller than remaining beside him. Victor drives to the bus station. He watches Graciela wait. He has money, transportation, and an open path out of Gotham. For once, Oz isn't physically stopping him, but Victor never leaves the car. Graciela boards the bus alone, taking with her the last direct connection to Victor's life before the flood. His decision isn't based only on fear. That would be easier to understand. Victor chooses Oz because Oz has made ambition feel like survival. California offers safety, but no guarantee that Victor will become anyone important. Oz offers danger, yet also the possibility of power, wealth, and belonging. Victor returns at the exact moment Oz's double game collapses. After the nightclub test, Oz and Sofia are intercepted by Nadia Maroni and her armed men. Nadia has been watching Oz and now understands that he's attempting to launch Bliss with Sofia while pretending to serve the Maroni family. His plan depended on each faction remaining unaware of his other promises. Now the contradictions are standing together in the same street. Sofia realizes that Oz has betrayed her. The Maronis prepare to punish him. Once again, every lie has reached its expiration point at the same time. Then Victor drives into the confrontation. He uses the car as a weapon, scattering the attackers and giving Oz a chance to escape. Oz gets inside without protecting Sofia, abandoning his business partner wounded in enemy territory. Whatever trust existed between them is destroyed in an instant. Victor has saved Oz, but the rescue also seals his own transformation. He had one final opportunity to leave the criminal world, and he turned away from it. He didn't return because Oz forced him. He returned because he chose the future Oz represented. That makes Victor more valuable to Oz than before. It also makes him far more vulnerable, because Oz can forgive mistakes when someone remains useful. What he can never tolerate is a person becoming independent enough to walk away. Sofia lies injured on the pavement while Oz escapes in Victor's car. Nadia Maroni stands over her and destroys the last excuse Sofia might have made for him. Oz wasn't merely running a private scheme behind her back. According to Nadia, he was responsible for Alberto's death. For Sofia, the revelation is larger than another criminal betrayal. Alberto was the only member of her family who fought to bring her home from Arkham. He was also the person with whom she planned Bliss and imagined a life beyond their father's control. Oz knew all of that. He listened while Sofia spoke about Alberto, encouraged her to trust him, and built a partnership using the dead man's idea. Then, when the Maronis closed in, he left her behind. Sofia manages to contact Dr. Julian Rush before losing consciousness. When she wakes in his apartment, the series moves away from Oz and gives her the center of the story. Until now, Sofia has been presented largely through Gotham's rumors. She's Carmine Falcone's daughter, the alleged Hangman, and a former Arkham patient whose movements make everyone around her nervous. Even when she behaves rationally, people watch her as though violence might suddenly emerge. The flashback reveals that this reputation wasn't the reason she entered Arkham. It was the result of what happened to her there. 10 years earlier, Sofia Falcone appears almost unrecognizable. She's polished, socially confident, and publicly involved with a foundation supporting women's mental health. Oz works as her driver. He's already ambitious, already observant, and already sensitive to the way powerful people speak to him. But he hasn't yet become the figure capable of challenging Gotham's major families. Sofia treats him with more familiarity than most Falcones would. She talks in front of him, relies on him, and assumes that whatever he hears will remain private. It isn't an equal friendship, and Sofia can still dismiss him when his opinions become inconvenient, but there is trust between them. At a fundraising event honoring Sofia's late mother, Isabella, Gotham Gazette reporter Summer Gleason approaches her with disturbing questions. Several women connected to Carmine Falcone's businesses have died by hanging. Authorities ruled the deaths suicides, but Summer believes they're connected. The method immediately reaches into Sofia's childhood. Isabella Falcone supposedly died by suicide in the same way. Sofia has lived with that explanation for years, but she also remembers details that never fit comfortably inside it. She remembers finding her mother. She remembers the fear surrounding that night. Most importantly, she remembers scratches on Carmine's hands. Summer doesn't simply present a theory. She has photographs and information showing signs of struggle on the dead women. Their injuries suggest that someone strangled them before arranging the scenes to resemble suicides. The implication is clear. Carmine Falcone may be a serial murderer, and Isabella may have been one of his victims. This possibility arrives just as Carmine appears ready to give Sofia everything she has been trained to inherit. During a family dinner, he praises her instincts and tells her he wants her to take control of the organization when he eventually steps aside. Alberto is loved, but he isn't considered disciplined enough to lead. Sofia is the serious child. She has the intelligence, composure, and judgment Carmine believes the family needs. For a moment, she receives the recognition she has spent her life earning. Then she mentions her mother. Carmine's warmth disappears. He repeats the official story that Isabella was unwell, subtly teaching Sofia that questions about the past will be treated as evidence of instability. This is the technique he will soon use to destroy her. He doesn't answer the accusation. He attacks the reliability of the person asking it. Sofia speaks to Alberto, but he doesn't want to investigate. Their father has given them wealth, security, and status. Looking too closely at where those things came from could destroy the world they enjoy. Alberto loves his sister, yet at this stage he still prefers comforting denial to a truth that demands action. Oz also warns Sofia against pursuing the story. He understands Carmine's power better than she does because he has spent years watching it from below. He knows that powerful men don't need innocence when they control the police, courts, businesses, and family witnesses around them. Sofia meets Summer anyway. When Carmine discovers the meeting, he calls Sofia into his office during a family celebration. He already knows what she discussed because Oz reported it to him. Sofia sees the betrayal almost immediately. The man she trusted to drive her safely through Gotham has delivered her private doubts directly to the person she fears may have murdered her mother. Carmine doesn't offer a convincing denial. Instead, he tells Sofia that she's confused and emotionally unwell. When she challenges him with the scratches she remembers seeing on his hands, he treats the memory as another symptom. The conversation isn't designed to reassure her. It's designed to establish the story everyone else will soon repeat. Oz drives Sofia away from the house. She confronts him, furious that he exposed her meeting. Oz attempts to justify himself. He warned her. He believed Carmine needed to know. Somewhere beneath those excuses is the calculation that will define the rest of his life. When forced to choose between personal loyalty and proximity to power, Oz chooses power. Police cars stop them before Sofia reaches home. She is arrested not only for the murders Summer was investigating, but also for Summer's death. Carmine has eliminated the reporter and placed the crimes of the Hangman onto his own daughter. The public sees the dramatic arrest of a wealthy woman accused of secretly murdering vulnerable employees. The story is sensational enough that few people ask who benefits from it. The Falcone family closes ranks around Carmine. Luca, Johnny Vitti, Carla, and others provide statements describing Sofia as unstable. These aren't distant witnesses. They're relatives who attended dinners with her, celebrated with her, and watched Carmine prepare her to lead. Now they repeat whatever is necessary to protect themselves. Alberto is horrified. He refuses to abandon Sofia, but his support can't compete with Carmine's control over the entire system. Sofia isn't given a normal opportunity to defend herself at trial. She is sent to Arkham for psychiatric evaluation, supposedly for 6 months. The cruelty of Arkham isn't random. Dr. Ventress understands what Carmine wants, and the institution gives him the tools to produce the desired result. Sofia is isolated, drugged, beaten, and repeatedly told that her perception can't be trusted. Julian Rush is present during her treatment, initially participating in a system he later claims not to have understood. A neighboring patient called Magpie offers occasional conversation. Other inmates consume medication that leaves them passive and disconnected. These experiences will eventually influence the concept behind Bliss, a drug that offers artificial relief by softening the pain of reality. But at this stage, Sofia isn't studying Arkham as a future businesswoman. She's trying to remain herself. That becomes increasingly difficult. An inmate attacks her while staff members allow the violence to unfold. Later, Sofia is placed in a room with the same woman and given an opportunity to retaliate. She refuses to kill her. The other patient then takes the weapon and dies in front of her. The doctors use the incident as further justification for treatment. Sofia is subjected to electroconvulsive therapy. Days lose their shape. 6 months stretch toward an indefinite confinement. Every reaction to abuse becomes proof that she needs more control. If she protests, she's aggressive. If she withdraws, she's detached. If she insists she was framed, she's delusional. This is how the Falcone family turns an accusation into an identity. When Alberto is finally allowed to visit, he tells Sofia that she has been declared unfit to stand trial. The promised 6-month evaluation has become a cage with no clear end. Alberto swears that he will find a way to release her, and unlike the rest of the family, he keeps trying. His devotion explains why his murder leaves such a devastating absence in the present. Sofia didn't simply lose a brother. She lost the only relative who continued treating her as a person. Inside Arkham, however, the damage has already begun. Sofia becomes convinced that Magpie is reporting her behavior to the staff. Whether every suspicion is accurate no longer matters. The institution has taught her that intimacy is surveillance and that kindness is often preparation for punishment. Sofia kills Magpie by smashing her head against a table. This is the terrible transformation at the center of the episode. Carmine framed Sofia for murders she didn't commit, but his attempt to invent a violent, unstable daughter helped create one. Arkham doesn't reveal the Hangman. It manufactures the version of Sofia that Gotham expected to find. She remains there for 10 years. Back in the present, Sofia confronts Julian Rush about his role in her treatment. He quit Arkham and later helped Alberto secure her release, but Sofia refuses to let his guilt become a substitute for her suffering. She senses that he was fascinated by watching her unravel. Even his concern contains an element of control. Sofia decides she is finished allowing men to tell her who she is. She returns to the Falcone estate for a family dinner. The same relatives who supplied statements against her now expect her to leave quietly for Italy. Sofia stands before them and describes their betrayal. They knew she wasn't the Hangman. They knew Carmine had sacrificed her. Yet for 10 years, almost none of them risked their comfort to help. Sofia raises a toast to new beginnings. Later, she takes Carla's young daughter, Gia, to the greenhouse for cake and a sleepover. Gia is innocent of the family's crimes, so Sofia protects her. While the child sleeps away from the mansion, Sofia releases gas throughout the house. By morning, the Falcone family members inside are dead. Johnny Vitti survives because an open window allowed fresh air into his room. Sofia wakes him at gunpoint, not because she has forgiven him, but because she still needs information and access to the criminal structure the family left behind. The massacre is both revenge and coronation. Sofia destroys the relatives who helped bury her while preserving the child who had no part in it. Yet the act also confirms that she has moved beyond seeking justice. The woman who once refused to kill another inmate now executes an entire household. Carmine wanted Gotham to believe Sofia Falcone was a monster. Oz helped him build the lie. Arkham spent 10 years forcing Sofia to live inside it. Now she has decided to use that monster against everyone who created her. By the time Oz and Victor escape the Maroni ambush, the purple Maserati has become evidence. It's too recognizable, too closely tied to Oz, and too damaged to remain useful. Oz watches the car burn beside the road, sacrificing one of the most visible symbols of the success he wants people to notice. For him, the loss is painful because the Maserati was never just transportation. It announced his arrival before he entered a room. Oz has spent his life being looked down on, so he surrounds himself with objects that force people to look. Destroying the car means admitting that his rise has not gone according to plan. Sofia knows he betrayed her. Nadia Maroni has taken the Bliss mushrooms, and his relationship with both major crime families has collapsed. But Oz refuses to describe any of this as failure. He gathers the men who worked beneath him in the old Falcone operation and presents the chaos as proof that his strategy is succeeding. When news reports reveal that nearly the entire Falcone family died in the mansion, his crew is stunned. Oz tells them not to mourn rich employers who never knew their names. He claims that the old order is finished and suggests that everything happening was part of a larger design. It wasn't. Sofia killed the Falcones for reasons that had almost nothing to do with Oz's plan. Yet Oz immediately absorbs her action into his own mythology. If an event helps him, he remembers it as something he caused. Eve calls out the danger. Oz has made enemies of the Falcones, the Maronis, and now Sofia. His promises have become too large to manage. She can see that he's balancing too many lies, and that the people around him will be the first to suffer when they collapse. Oz responds with the confidence of a man who has no safer option. He tells his crew that they're going to strike the Maronis directly, recover the Bliss supply, and take control before anyone has time to regroup. Their target is Taj Maroni, Sal, and Nadia's son. Taj is easy to locate because he advertises his life online. Oz and his men abduct him, giving them the leverage needed to negotiate for the stolen mushrooms. The kidnapping shows how quickly Oz's conflict with the Maronis has moved beyond business. Sal once treated Oz as a potentially useful insider. Nadia regarded him as a reckless subordinate who could still earn his place. Now Oz is threatening their child and preparing to kill the entire family if it gives him control of the drug market. At the same time, Sofia is dealing with the morning after the mansion massacre. Police officers walk through the estate while bodies are removed, and Chief Mackenzie Bach questions whether a gas leak could realistically have killed almost every adult member of one of Gotham's most powerful families. Sofia performs grief because grief is what the surviving daughter is expected to display. She doesn't confess or attempt an elaborate explanation. She calmly reminds the police how much influence her family possessed and makes it clear that accusing her without evidence would create problems they may not want. Yet one fact remains difficult to explain. Johnny Vitti is missing. Sofia has kept him alive beneath the family mausoleum. She needs access to Carmine's hidden money, and Vitti knows where it is. She strips away his comfort and exposes him to the cold, attempting to break the man who helped imprison her. Vitti initially refuses because he assumes Sofia will kill him after he reveals the accounts. Then he offers something she values more than money: information about Isabella. According to Vitti, Sofia's mother had been preparing to leave Carmine. Her bags were packed, and Vitti had agreed to help. Isabella remained partly because of her children, and Carmine killed her before she could escape. Vitti admits that he failed her, but he also argues that Sofia cannot control the surviving Falcone soldiers through vengeance alone. She needs legitimacy. She needs money, public authority, and someone the old organization recognizes. Sofia temporarily accepts his help, but Vitti misunderstands what she is building. He assumes that she wants to inherit the Falcone family. Sofia has decided that the Falcone name itself must die. Elsewhere, Oz divides his remaining responsibilities. He sends Victor to watch Francis while he handles the Maronis. Entrusting his mother to Victor is one of the strongest signs of faith Oz can offer. Francis is the person whose approval gives his ambition emotional meaning, and she is also the vulnerability his enemies could use to destroy him. When Victor arrives, he finds signs that something is wrong. The apartment is disordered, appliances have been left unattended, and Francis briefly mistakes him for Jack, one of Oz's dead brothers. Her condition is becoming more difficult to conceal. In moments of clarity, she remains sharp enough to detect Victor's poor lies, but time and illness are breaking holes in her memory. Victor tells her that Oz is making a move against the Maronis. He exaggerates Oz's role in the destruction of the Falcones, repeating the grand story his boss has created. Frances is thrilled. She has always pushed Oz toward power, treating ordinary survival as an insult to what he could become. That pressure helps explain why Oz can never be satisfied with safety. He isn't only trying to defeat rivals. He's still performing for the woman who taught him that being overlooked was a form of humiliation. His attack on the Maronis begins inside Blackgate. Oz pays a prison guard to stab Sal before the hostage exchange. If the assassination works, Nadia will arrive emotionally weakened, Taj will be Oz's only major leverage, and the Maroni organization will lose its most experienced leader. Oz then meets Nadia at a warehouse. She brings the mushrooms and Oz releases Taj. For a moment, the exchange appears to be complete. Then Nadia's gunmen reveal themselves. She never intended to let Oz leave. The Maronis consider kidnapping Taj a violation beyond any normal gang conflict, and Nadia wants the man responsible dead. But Oz has anticipated the betrayal. A gunfight erupts, and his men respond from concealed positions. Oz then reveals the true cruelty of his plan. Before releasing Taj, he covered him with fuel. When mother and son are together, Oz ignites them. Nadia refuses to abandon Taj even as the flames spread. Oz watches them die, eliminating 2 members of the Maroni family in a single act. It is one of his most ruthless victories, but the fire also damages the mushroom shipment he fought to recover. When he opens the truck, most of the Bliss crop has been destroyed. Only a small portion survives. Then Sal calls. The prison attack failed. Sal killed the guard, escaped Blackgate, and now knows Oz murdered his wife and son. Oz tried to remove the Maroni family in one move. Instead, he has created an enemy with nothing left to protect and no reason to negotiate. While Oz's plan is burning down around him, Sofia gathers the surviving Falcone soldiers. Johnny Vitti introduces her, expecting his assistance to make him essential to the new organization. Sofia begins by admitting that she killed the family. She doesn't ask the men to believe a comforting lie. She tells them the old leadership was corrupt, selfish, and willing to sacrifice anyone beneath it. Then she rejects the Falcone name. Sofia adopts her mother's maiden name and declares that the organization will now belong to the Gigante family. The choice is personal, but it's also political. Carmine built his power by controlling the identity of everyone around him. He turned Isabella's murder into suicide and Sofia's resistance into insanity. By becoming Sofia Gigante, she places the name of one of his victims above his own. Vitti interrupts, still behaving as though Sofia requires his approval. He tells the soldiers that respect must be earned and attempts to position himself as the experienced man guiding an emotional new leader. Sofia shoots him. She then empties Carmine's hidden money onto the table and promises the soldiers that under her command they will be paid according to their value. The message is simple. She doesn't need Vitti to transfer legitimacy. His death proves that authority now comes directly from her. This is the creation of a new criminal family, but Sofia's promise of fairness contains a contradiction. She condemns the Falcones for using their people while recruiting many of the same soldiers into another violent hierarchy. She wants to believe that replacing the leadership will transform the system. Yet the first public act of the Gigante organization is an execution. With Sal free and Sofia consolidating power, Oz must move Frances somewhere less obvious. Victor takes her to an abandoned apartment in Crown Point, one of the neighborhoods still devastated by the flood. Utilities are unreliable, buildings remain damaged, and local criminals loot whatever has been left behind. Victor recognizes one of them, Squid, an older neighborhood gangster who remembers him from before he joined Oz. Squid sees Victor's car, clothes, and nervous behavior and immediately understands that the teenager has become connected to something profitable. Victor tries to avoid him, but Crown Point is too small for secrets to remain hidden. Oz asks Eve to move into the safe location with him. He imagines Frances, Eve, Victor, and his criminal crew forming a loyal inner circle around the empire he is building. Eve refuses. She has her own people to protect, and she understands that becoming more dependent on Oz will not make her safer. Her refusal hurts because Oz wants more than obedience. He wants the people around him to confirm his preferred story about himself. He wants to be seen as a provider, a protector, and a man creating a family. When Eve chooses distance, she challenges that fantasy. Back in Crown Point, Oz searches through old possessions and finds a token from Gotham's abandoned trolley system. As children, he and his brothers explored the tunnels beneath the city. Those memories guide him toward a solution no current mob leader would consider. Oz leads Victor underground. Beneath flooded streets and neglected buildings lies a forgotten transit network. The tunnels are dark, humid, and connected to multiple parts of Gotham. The city's wealthiest families abandoned the system when it stopped serving their interests, leaving behind an invisible kingdom beneath the neighborhoods they ignored. For Oz, it is perfect. The surviving Bliss mushrooms can be cultivated in the damp underground environment. Products and soldiers can move without attracting attention. Most importantly, neither Sofia nor Sal knows where to look. Oz calls the tunnels their new base of operations. The lights flicker, the power fails, and darkness briefly swallows his grand announcement. But this time, the setback doesn't matter. Oz has found his natural territory. Carmine ruled from towers, mansions, and exclusive clubs. Sofia has claimed the family estate. Sal represents an older criminal dynasty fighting to recover what was stolen. Oz will build from beneath them all. The abandoned trolley station reflects exactly who he is: hidden, discarded, underestimated, and connected to every part of Gotham. He has lost his car, his public position, most of his product, and every powerful ally he once possessed. Yet those losses have removed the last reason to pretend he is still serving someone else. Oz Cobb has gone underground, and for the first time, he is preparing to create an empire that belongs entirely to him. Several weeks underground are enough to transform Oz's damaged mushroom supply into a functioning narcotics empire. The abandoned trolley station no longer feels like a temporary hiding place. Electrical cables run across the walls. Tables are covered with Bliss, and workers move through the tunnels packaging doses for distribution. Victor has grown more confident. Oz's surviving men now treat him like a real lieutenant, and street dealers carry the product into neighborhoods the old crime families barely understood. The operation works because it doesn't resemble the Falcone system. Carmine controlled Gotham from clubs, warehouses, politicians, and institutions. His power depended on everyone knowing that his family stood above them. Oz uses invisibility. The trolley tunnels let his people move beneath checkpoints, bypass enemy surveillance, and appear in districts without revealing where the product originated. Sofia and Sal have soldiers, money, and recognizable names. Oz has routes they don't know exist. He also has something neither rival fully understands: the loyalty of people who have spent their entire lives receiving leftovers. Oz pays street gangs promptly and treats their leaders as partners when the established families would have treated them as disposable labor. His generosity isn't selfless. He needs sellers, lookouts, drivers, and soldiers who can operate across Gotham. But he understands that respect can be manufactured through small acts. Remember someone's name, pay them what was promised, complain about the same rich bosses they hate. Make them feel that joining you is rebellion rather than employment. Bliss begins spreading. That success makes Sofia Gigante and Sal Maroni's new alliance more urgent. Both have personal reasons to kill Oz. Sofia believes he murdered Alberto and helped Carmine destroy her life. Sal knows he burned Nadia and Taj alive. Their families spent years fighting each other, but Oz has given them a shared enemy. They begin hitting the street-level operation instead of searching blindly for the underground base. Dealers are killed and displayed as warnings. The message is aimed beyond the bodies themselves. Anyone carrying Bliss can expect the combined punishment of the Gigantes and Maronis. The strategy works. Oz's partners become frightened, supply lines weaken, and the confidence generated by Bliss begins to disappear. Street organizations may resent Sofia and Sal, but they know what those names represent. Oz is promising a future. His enemies can kill them tonight. Even inside Crown Point, Oz's victories remain fragile. The neighborhood is still suffering from the flood. Electricity is unreliable, heating systems fail, and city resources are redirected toward wealthier districts. Oz can build a drug laboratory beneath the streets, but he cannot immediately provide basic comfort for the people above them. The failure becomes personal when he finds Frances trapped in a bathtub. Her dementia has worsened, and she has been sitting in cold water, unable to complete the simple act of getting out. Oz lifts her, dries her, and tries to restore her dignity without showing how frightened he is. Frances experiences a brief period of clarity and understands what is happening to her. She makes Oz promise that if her mind disappears before her body does, he will help her die rather than allow her to remain trapped inside confusion. Oz agrees. The promise exposes the deepest contradiction in his love for her. He wants to protect Frances from pain, but he also needs her alive because she is the audience for his entire life. His wealth, reputation, and ambition are offerings placed before his mother. Without her approval, the Empire risks feeling empty. For now, Oz focuses on what he can control. He confronts Councilman Sebastian Haiti, a corrupt official whose past financial crimes gave Carmine leverage over him. Oz inherits that leverage and adds physical intimidation, gripping Haiti's nose with pliers while demanding that electrical power be returned to Crown Point. The encounter is brutal, yet it produces a result the legitimate government failed to deliver. This is how Oz begins becoming the figure he once admired in Rex Calabresi. To the people of Crown Point, the political system is distant and indifferent. Oz forces the system to respond. The fact that he does it through blackmail and violence may matter less to residents who finally regain heat and light. He is building public loyalty with the same methods he uses to build criminal loyalty, identify what people have been denied, provide it, and make certain they know who deserves the credit. Victor faces a smaller threat with equally serious consequences. Squid has noticed his transformation. The frightened teenager who once struggled to speak is now wearing better clothes, carrying money, and moving through Crown Point with purpose. Squid wants access to whatever business has produced that change. Victor initially tries to imitate Oz's softer method. He offers Squid money to leave the situation alone. Squid accepts the cash but recognizes that Victor's fear makes him vulnerable. He demands a meeting with Oz and threatens to expose the operation if Victor refuses. More dangerously, Squid knows about Frances. That knowledge turns him from an annoyance into a direct threat. Victor cannot allow an unstable local criminal to reveal that Oz's mother is hidden nearby. He leads Squid into an alley, pulls a gun, and shoots him. The killing is messy and immediate. Victor doesn't resemble Oz during it. There is no confident speech, no performance, and no clever method for redirecting blame. He is terrified by what he has done. The act wasn't part of an ambitious plan. It was the desperate decision of someone trying to protect his new family before the danger could reach them. Victor returns to Oz shaken. He doesn't need to describe every detail. Oz understands. Instead of reacting with horror, Oz tells him he handled the problem correctly. Killing becomes easier, he says, because that is what Victor needs to believe if he is going to remain useful. This is another stage in Oz's corruption of him. Victor didn't kill for money or status. He killed to protect Frances and preserve the place he now belongs. That emotional motive allows him to view the murder as necessary. Oz reinforces that interpretation because loyalty proven through violence is the form of loyalty he trusts most. Sofia searches for the same kind of emotional leverage. She and Sal break into Oz's former apartment, hoping to identify someone he values. The rooms contain evidence of a life Oz abandoned in a hurry, including a photograph of Eve Carlo. Sal is skeptical that the relationship means anything. Sofia believes even a man like Oz must have a weakness. She finds Eve and confronts her. Eve expects to die because she still believes Sofia was the hangman who murdered women connected to Gotham's clubs. Instead, Sofia tells her the truth. Carmine committed the murders, framed his daughter, and used the Falcone organization to protect himself. Oz knew enough to understand what Carmine had done. He still served him. The revelation affects Eve because some of the hangman's victims were women from her world. Oz presented himself as someone who cared about people like her while continuing to work for the man killing them. His affection may have been genuine in certain moments, but it never outweighed his ambition. Eve also challenges Sofia's assumptions. She explains that her relationship with Oz was partly a performance. She gave him the attention and admiration he paid for, but she never mistook the arrangement for a normal romance. Unlike Sofia, she wasn't born into wealth that allowed moral choices to remain simple. Eve built a family among vulnerable women and learned to survive powerful men without believing their promises. Sofia recognizes that loyalty. Eve is willing to risk death rather than expose the women under her protection. It reminds Sofia of the loyalty her own family denied her. She lets Eve live, but after learning that Oz helped Carmine conceal the hangman murders, Eve points Sofia toward Crown Point. Oz may believe he has kept Francis separate from his criminal life, yet his need to bring people into his private world has left a trail. Meanwhile, Oz attempts to solve the pressure on his distribution network by gathering Gotham's smaller criminal organizations in one room. The Sullivans, the Lowboys, the Odessa Mob, the Triads, and other groups arrive carrying years of hostility toward one another. Many of them have fought over territory, customers, and insults. None naturally accepts Oz as a leader. Feng Zhao of the Triads directly questions why anyone should trust him. Oz has betrayed nearly every major figure with whom he has worked. He turned against the Falcones, manipulated the Maronis, abandoned Sofia, and repeatedly changed sides whenever survival required it. Oz doesn't deny the accusation. Instead, he acknowledges the things he has done, including his responsibility for Alberto's death, and reframes betrayal as proof that Gotham's old rulers can be defeated. He argues that families like the Falcones and Maronis became rich because smaller crews performed the dangerous work while receiving none of the respect. The city's political elite function the same way. They drain resources from neighborhoods like Crown Point, then expect those communities to remain divided and powerless. Individually, every gang at the meeting can be crushed. Together, they can control Gotham from the street upward. Oz calls the gathering the Gold Summit. The name is grander than the room, the beer, or the people inside it, but grandeur is part of his method. He gives ordinary criminals a story in which they are no longer scavengers fighting over scraps. They are founders of a new order. One by one, the leaders accept the beer he offers. The alliance is unstable and built on shared resentment rather than genuine trust. Oz knows many of these people would betray him for the right reward. The difference is that he understands their anger well enough to direct it temporarily towards Sofia, Sal, and Gotham's elite. For this brief moment, everything Oz promised seems possible. Bliss is spreading. The smaller gangs are united. Haiti restores electricity to Crown Point. Lights return to the windows, and neglected residents celebrate a basic service as though it were a miracle. Inside the safe apartment, Francis and Victor dance together. Victor smiles because the woman he has been protecting is happy. Francis enjoys a moment of clarity and warmth. Neither realizes that Sofia is watching from outside. Oz has just convinced Gotham's forgotten gangs that his strength comes from people standing together. But his enemies have discovered the people he keeps closest. The tunnels protected his business. They could not protect his heart. Long before Oz Cobb built a drug empire beneath Gotham, He was a boy living in a crowded apartment with Francis and his brothers, Jack and Benny. The family had little money, and Francis worked constantly to hold their lives together. Jack was old enough to understand responsibility. Benny was younger and playful. Oz occupied a more difficult position between them. His damaged leg made ordinary childhood games harder, but the deeper wound came from the way he believed other people saw him. Even at that age, Oz was watching the neighborhood's powerful men. One of them was Rex Calabrese, the local gangster Oz later remembered while drinking with Alberto Falcone. Rex carried himself with confidence, received greetings on the street, and seemed able to command respect without asking for it. Jack understood that Rex was dangerous. Oz saw something else. He saw a man the neighborhood noticed. That distinction explains much of the adult Oz becomes. He doesn't grow up wanting only money. He wants the emotional experience of being impossible to dismiss. Every expensive suit, dramatic promise, and public act of generosity is meant to erase the boy who felt smaller than everyone around him. One rainy day, Frances sends her sons outside. The boys explore the old underground trolley system and begin playing hide-and-seek. Jack and Benny climb down into an overflow tunnel. Oz struggles to follow because of his leg. His brothers laugh and continue the game without him. For Jack and Benny, it may be a careless childhood moment. For Oz, it becomes another humiliation. He closes the heavy access door and leaves them trapped below. At first, the act looks like a temporary punishment. Oz wants them to feel excluded in the way he feels excluded. He wants to return home first, have Francis to himself, and prove that he doesn't need them. But the rain grows heavier. Francis asks where Jack and Benny are. Oz lies and tells her they went to see a movie. Instead of confessing, he settles beside her to watch Top Hat, the old musical she loves. The film's polished fantasy fills the room while stormwater pours into the tunnel beneath the city. Jack and Benny cannot open the door. They drown while Oz sits with his mother. The series doesn't present this as a single accidental tragedy that Oz spends his life honestly regretting. His defining choice comes afterward. He continues the lie. He allows Frances to believe her sons vanished during the storm rather than admitting that he locked them underground. Oz's rise has always been built over their bodies. In the present, Sofia's kidnapping of Frances forces that buried history toward the surface. Oz reaches the Crown Point apartment and finds the rooms destroyed. Victor is unconscious and Frances is gone. Victor wakes and explains that Sofia took her. Oz's first reaction isn't strategic. The image he has carefully maintained begins to collapse. His mother is the one person he cannot reduce to a business calculation because his need for her is tied to everything he believes about himself. Before Oz can organize a rescue, Sal Maroni's men arrive. Victor escapes through the fire escape, but Oz is captured and beaten. Sal has lost Nadia and Taj, his freedom, and the remnants of his old life. Nothing remains except revenge and the opportunity to take what Oz built. He forces Oz to lead him into the trolley tunnels. The underground station is Oz's greatest achievement. He found the location, revived the abandoned infrastructure, expanded the surviving Bliss supply, and united crews that the established families ignored. Sal walks into it and announces that it now belongs to him. Oz's workers hesitate. Sal Maroni is an old name carrying decades of fear. Oz is the boss who brought them there, but his authority is still new. For a moment, the entire empire could change ownership without a major battle. Oz begins talking. He mocks Sal for arriving after the difficult work has already been completed. He reminds everyone that Sal needed Oz to find the operation and suggests that the legendary Maroni power has been reduced to stealing another man's success. Oz understands that Sal's grief has made him physically and emotionally unstable, so he pushes until anger replaces caution. The confrontation becomes violent. Sal and Oz fight through the underground facility, two men carrying very different ideas of power. Sal represents inheritance, family, and an established criminal name. Oz represents adaptation. He He has no dynasty behind him, so he turns every environment, weakness, and insult into a weapon. But the final outcome isn't the triumphant victory Oz wants. Sal suffers a heart attack. He collapses before Oz can decisively defeat him. Oz tries to force him back into the fight, furious that his enemy's body is taking away the satisfaction of winning. Sal dies anyway. Oz shoots the corpse. The bullets cannot change the truth. Oz has survived Sal Maroni, but he didn't conquer him in the dramatic fashion his personal legend demands. He takes Sal's ring, the same ring Carmine once stole and Oz later returned, and places it on his own hand. The ring has now moved through Gotham's criminal history. It represented Sal's power, Carmine's victory, Alberto's death, and Oz's attempt to manipulate a gang war. By claiming it, Oz declares himself the survivor of both old families. Yet while Oz takes possession of Sal's symbol, Sofia is attacking the identity beneath his own. At the Gigante mansion, Frances refuses to behave like a helpless hostage. She insults Sofia, challenges her intelligence, and shows little fear of death. Sofia expected Oz's mother to be a source of information or leverage. Instead, she encounters the woman who helped create his relentless hunger. Frances doesn't describe Oz as a weak son she needs to protect. She describes him as someone destined for greatness. Even as her memory fails, she clings to the belief that Oz will become the most powerful man in Gotham. Sofia notices something else when Frances mentions Jack and Benny. Oz never told her that he had brothers. The omission is suspicious because Oz talks constantly about his childhood, his mother, and the neighborhood figures who inspired him. He uses personal stories to make people feel close to him. Leaving two brothers out of that history suggests the truth is too dangerous to include. Sofia brings Julian Rush to examine Frances. Julian uses his clinical skills to guide her through confused memories. His role remains disturbing because therapy, interrogation, and manipulation continue to overlap around him. He claims to care about Sofia, yet he repeatedly uses vulnerable minds to help her gain control. Frances recalls the night Jack and Benny disappeared. Her memories are incomplete, but the emotional damage remains clear. She remembers rain, fear, and the discovery that both boys were dead. Sofia realizes that whatever happened to them may be the key to breaking Oz. At the same time, she confronts the consequences of her own revenge. Gia, the young relative Sofia saved from the mansion massacre, has begun speaking to the authorities. Sofia visits her in a children's home, hoping to learn what she remembers. Gia asks about the gas mask she saw among Sofia's belongings. The question confirms that the child knows the deaths weren't accidental. Sofia denies responsibility and tells Gia that the Falcone family were bad people who failed both of them. She wants the girl to understand the massacre as liberation. But Gia isn't liberated. She is alone, traumatized, and surrounded by strangers. Sofia once saw herself as the protector who spared an innocent child. Now she is forced to recognize that preserving Gia's life didn't protect her from the consequences. The girl has lost her mother, home, and entire family because Sofia chose collective punishment. After leaving, Sofia breaks down. This doesn't erase what she did. It shows that she can still recognize suffering even when she caused it. Oz usually transforms guilt into another story about necessity. Sofia is less capable of hiding from the person she has become. She returns to the mansion exhausted by the cycle. The Falcone name is gone, Viti is dead, Sal's alliance has brought no peace, and control of Gotham feels like another prison. She tells Julian that she wants freedom, but first she wants Oz to suffer. Oz calls using Sal's phone and confirms that Maroni is dead. He offers Sofia everything connected to Bliss: the mushrooms, tunnels, equipment, routes, and organization. In return, she must release Frances unharmed. The offer reveals Frances's true value. Oz is willing to surrender the empire he sacrificed countless people to create. Yet even this apparent act of love remains complicated. He needs Frances alive not only because he loves her, but because his imagined future requires her to witness it. Sofia agrees to the exchange. Oz prepares the trolley station for her arrival. His men arm themselves, expecting betrayal. When Sofia's vehicle enters the tunnel, it moves without a visible driver. Oz approaches carefully and hears her voice over the phone. She tells him she has left a present. A shape lies beneath a covering in the back of the vehicle. Oz fears it is Francis's body. He pulls the material away and finds a bomb. He barely reaches an adjoining tunnel before the explosion tears through the underground station. The Bliss laboratory disappears in fire. Oz's workers are killed. The forgotten tunnels that gave him protection become channels for the blast. Above ground, part of Crown Point collapses, bringing devastation back to a neighborhood still recovering from the flood. Sofia hasn't simply destroyed Oz's product. She has destroyed the argument that his power benefits Crown Point. He forced the electricity back on, gave residents money, and presented himself as the neighborhood's protector. Now his hidden criminal operation has brought another catastrophe beneath their homes. Oz survives, crawling through dust and wreckage. Once again, everyone around him pays the cost while he emerges alive. But survival is no longer enough. His laboratory is gone, his soldiers are dead. Francis remains in Sofia's control. The smaller gangs may abandon him now that his product and apparent strength have disappeared. Most dangerously, Sofia knows that Jack and Benny existed. Oz has spent years rewriting their deaths as private grief, keeping Francis's love while erasing the betrayal beneath it. Sofia is preparing to force that truth into the open. And for the first time, Oz Cobb may face an enemy he cannot defeat simply by inventing a better lie. Before Sofia destroys Oz's empire, Julian Rush pushes Francis back into the memory she has spent decades trying to contain. The truth is more complicated than Oz ever understood. Francis knew what he had done. After Jack and Benny disappeared, she found a flashlight in Oz's coat from the underground trolley tunnels. She understood that her surviving son had lied about his brothers going to the cinema. She understood why he did it too. Oz wanted her attention completely, and the storm had turned his childish act of jealousy into murder. Francis spoke to Rex Calabrese about him. Rex offered to help pay for the boy's funeral, but Francis was thinking beyond burial costs. She wanted to know what should be done with a child capable of killing his brothers and then calmly lying to his mother. Rex recognized Oz's potential. He saw the same qualities that would later allow Oz to survive Gotham's criminal world: emotional intelligence without moral restraint, an instinct for deception, and an almost frightening ability to continue after doing something unforgivable. Rex suggested that Francis could direct those qualities. A child like Oz might become either a great man or a terrible one, but he would never be ordinary. Francis considered having him killed. She took Oz to Monroe's, a jazz club where Rex's men were waiting. Young Oz believed the evening was a reward. He dressed carefully, enjoyed the music, and told his mother about the future he imagined for them. Someday, he promised, he would become important enough to place her in a penthouse above the city. She would have everything she deserved, and no one would ever look down on them again. Francis couldn't go through with the plan. She took him home and devoted herself to the one son she had left. But her choice wasn't forgiveness. From then on, love, disgust, grief, dependence, and ambition became inseparable. She pushed Oz toward greatness, partly because greatness was the only possible justification for allowing him to live. In the present, Sofia brings Oz and Francis back to the abandoned Monroe's. It's the perfect location for the confrontation. Oz remembers the club as one of the happiest nights of his childhood. Francis remembers it as the night she almost ordered his death. Sofia wants the truth spoken aloud. She tells Oz that Francis knew he killed Jack and Benny. She also reveals that Francis once intended to have Rex kill him. Both mother and son reject the accusation. Oz insists he did nothing to his brothers, while Francis refuses to give Sofia the satisfaction of seeing their private lie destroyed. Sofia escalates the pressure. Her men prepare to cut off one of Francis's fingers unless Oz confesses. Even now, he refuses. That refusal shocks Sofia more than the original crime. Oz has repeatedly claimed that Frances is the person he loves most. He offered his drug empire to save her, yet when preserving her body requires him to admit what he did, he chooses the lie. The confession would destroy the identity he has built. Oz needs to believe he is the devoted son who rescued Frances from poverty. If he admits that he murdered her other children, every act of care becomes part of the same theft. The apartment, clothes, money, and promised penthouse can never repay her because he is the reason she lost the family she once had. Frances finally breaks. She tells Oz that she knew all along. She remembers her son's drowning while he said nothing. She admits that part of her has hated him throughout his life and wishes she had allowed Rex to kill him. Then she stabs Oz in the stomach with a broken bottle. Oz can survive gunfire, torture, gang wars, and explosions. What nearly destroys him is hearing his mother reject the story he created for both of them. He stares at Frances like a child who cannot understand why his greatest performance has failed. Frances sees Jack and Benny in the room. Overwhelmed by the memories, she collapses from a severe stroke. The emergency gives Oz his opening. He escapes with her and gets her to a hospital, but he has no time to remain by her side. Sofia is dismantling everything around him, and unless he changes the balance immediately, Frances's sacrifice will lead nowhere. Victor finds Oz hiding in a storage room, closing the wound in his stomach with a stapler. The Empire appears finished. Bliss is gone, the underground base has been destroyed. Most of Oz's soldiers are dead, and the neighborhood gangs no longer see any reason to support him. Victor refuses to accept defeat. He reminds Oz that Crown Point received electricity because of him. People earned money because of the Bliss operation. The gangs joined because Oz gave them a vision larger than surviving under the old families. Victor doesn't merely encourage his boss. He returns Oz to the mythology that has always sustained him. Oz begins planning again. Sofia has also reached the end of her ambition. She gathers Gotham's gang leaders at the burned-out remains of the Falcone estate and offers them everything. She will leave the city. They can divide her territory, businesses, and resources among themselves. She asks for only one thing in return, Oz Cobb. Then she burns the mansion. By destroying the Falcone home, Sofia attempts to free herself from Carmine's legacy. She has rejected his name, killed the relatives who betrayed her, dismantled the organization, and now destroys the building that represented the family's power. For the first time, she appears ready to leave Gotham rather than replace her father at the top of it, but she still needs to punish Oz. That need prevents her from escaping. Sofia understands that revenge has kept her tied to the same system she claims to hate, yet she cannot accept freedom while Oz remains alive. Oz takes a different route toward power. He returns to Councilman Haiti and offers him a political story that benefits them both. The Crown Point explosion can be blamed on Sofia's war with Sal Maroni. Bliss can be presented as a criminal operation they created. Haiti can appear to help eliminate Gotham's two most dangerous organizations, while Oz provides information from the street. The councilman warns him that officials are preparing to investigate corruption connected to Carmine Falcone. If Oz wants access to respectable power, he must create distance between himself and his criminal history. Oz understands immediately. Controlling Gotham's underworld is not enough. Carmine's greatest strength came from influence over politicians, police officers, judges, and institutions. Oz must become useful to the people who publicly condemn men like him. Before he can secure that future, Feng Zhao and the Triads capture him. Sofia's offer is working. The gang leaders would rather inherit her territory than remain loyal to a man whose product has disappeared. But Victor has been speaking to the people beneath those leaders. At the Gold Summit, Oz argued that Gotham's old bosses became wealthy by exploiting everyone below them. Victor turns that argument into a coup. The seconds in command murder their own leaders and align themselves with Oz. Zhao's lieutenant betrays him. Across Gotham, senior gang figures are eliminated by the men who serve them. The city's criminal hierarchy is inverted in one coordinated night. When Sofia arrives expecting Oz to be delivered, Victor and the new alliance strike. Her soldiers are killed, and Sofia is taken captive. Oz drives her through Gotham himself. Years earlier, he drove Sofia as her employee and betrayed her confidence to Carmine. Now he sits behind the wheel as the man who has defeated her. Sofia recognizes that he intends to kill her and seems almost relieved. Death would end the struggle and deny Arkham another chance to consume her. Oz takes her near the water. They exchange final insults and promise that they will meet again in hell. Sofia waits for the gunshot. Police lights appear instead. Oz has arranged for her arrest and supplied a version of events that places the gang war, drug operation, murders, and Crown Point explosion around Sofia and Sal. She is returned to Arkham, the institution where Carmine once buried her. This is more cruel than killing her. Oz knows exactly what Arkham means to Sofia. He knows it was the place where her identity was taken apart and rebuilt around a lie. Sending her back also solves his practical problem. A dead Sofia might inspire questions or revenge. An imprisoned Sofia becomes the officially recognized villain responsible for Gotham's chaos. Oz has defeated her by repeating Carmine's original crime. At the hospital, he receives the final cost of his victory. Frances survived, but the stroke left her unresponsive. Doctors explain that meaningful recovery is unlikely. Oz refuses to accept it. He stands beside her bed and begs her to say she is proud of him. He has destroyed two historic crime families, survived Sofia, united Gotham's smaller gangs, gained political influence, and become the man he always promised she would witness. Frances gives him nothing. The tragedy isn't that Oz failed to fulfill his promise. It's that he fulfilled it after making her incapable of enjoying it. Her mind is now trapped inside the condition she once asked him to prevent. Victor remains beside him. Later, Oz and Victor sit near the river, away from the noise of the city. Victor tells Oz that they are family. He thanks him for taking a chance on a frightened kid from Crown Point and giving him purpose. Oz embraces him. Then he places an arm around Victor's neck and begins to squeeze. Victor has done nothing wrong. He saved Oz from Nadia Maroni, refused to abandon him after the explosion, protected Frances, killed Squid, organized the gang uprising, and made Oz's final victory possible. That loyalty is precisely why Oz kills him. Sofia used Frances to reach him. Oz decides that loving someone creates a weakness his enemies can exploit. Victor has also seen too much. He knows the truth about Oz's operation, his fear, his failures, and the people he sacrificed. Victor struggles, but Oz doesn't release him. Afterward, Oz takes his money and throws his identification into the water, reducing the teenager who helped win Gotham to another anonymous victim of street crime. The murder completes Oz's transformation. Throughout the series, it remained possible to imagine that his relationship with Victor contained a small piece of redemption. Oz destroys that possibility with his own hands. He doesn't lose his humanity accidentally. He identifies it as a weakness and strangles it. Sofia wakes in Arkham, returned to the cage she feared most. Julian is working there again, placing another familiar man between her and freedom. But he brings her a letter from Selina Kyle, who identifies herself as Sofia's half-sister. For the first time, Sofia learns that she may still have family outside the Falcone dynasty. Oz moves Frances into the penthouse he promised her. She lies in a hospital bed beside a window overlooking Gotham. A tear runs down her face, but Oz interprets it as pride because he can no longer tolerate any reality that contradicts him. That night, Eve wears Frances's purple dress and styled wig. She dances with Oz and speaks the words he needed from his mother. She tells him she is proud of him. Outside, the bat signal illuminates the sky. Oz Cobb has become Gotham's criminal king, but his victory is entirely artificial. His mother cannot praise him, so he pays another woman to perform her. His protégé loved him, so he murdered him. His rival survived, but only inside the institution that once destroyed her. Oz finally reaches the top. There is no one left beside him who can honestly celebrate it. The ending of The Penguin doesn't reveal that Oz Cobb suddenly became evil. It reveals that every apparent contradiction in him was part of the same system. Oz can feel affection. He can recognize pain in other people. He can provide money, restore electricity to a neglected neighborhood, protect his mother, encourage Victor, and speak convincingly about the unfairness built into Gotham. None of those qualities is entirely fake. What makes him monstrous is the rule beneath them. Every person, relationship, and principle remains valuable only while it supports the story Oz needs to tell about himself. That's why Victor's death is the most important scene in the series. Victor doesn't betray him. He does the opposite. He remains when escape is possible, saves Oz during the Maroni ambush, protects Francis, kills Squid to preserve their secret, finds Oz after the trolley explosion, and organizes the uprising that defeats Sofia. By the end, Victor has become the loyal family Oz claimed he always wanted, but genuine family creates obligations. Victor knows Oz's weaknesses and expects emotional loyalty in return. He can no longer be treated as a disposable employee without exposing the emptiness of Oz's promises. Oz kills him because Victor has become real. The counterfeit relationships are safer. Eve can be paid to wear Francis's dress, dance in the penthouse, and say exactly what Oz needs to hear. The performance cannot challenge him because he controls its terms. Francis and Victor are dangerous because they possess independent memories of him. They know the difference between the man he is and the man he pretends to be. This is also why Oz refuses to confess what happened to Jack and Benny, even while Sofia threatens Francis. At first, his silence can look like stubborn criminal discipline, but he isn't protecting himself from a legal consequence. The crime occurred decades earlier, and almost everyone capable of proving it is dead. He is protecting his identity. Oz has built his entire life around the belief that he is Francis's devoted son. He tells himself that he survived poverty for her, entered crime for her, and climbed toward power so she could finally live above the city. Admitting that he killed her other sons would expose the bargain beneath their relationship. Francis didn't receive a loyal protector after losing Jack and Benny. She received the person responsible for their deaths. Every later gift is therefore contaminated. The promised penthouse becomes the most disturbing symbol in the finale. Young Oz describes it as the ultimate proof of success. He will place Francis high above Gotham, where she can look down on everyone who dismissed their family. By the end, he fulfills the promise exactly. She has the view, the expensive room, and the son who controls the city. But Francis cannot move or speak. The show gives Oz the image he wanted while removing the emotional meaning he expected from it. His dream becomes a museum display. Francis is placed beside the window like a possession, proving that he succeeded. When a tear leaves her eye, Oz chooses to interpret it as happiness. Whether she is grieving, frightened, trapped, or even fully conscious no longer matters to him. Her body is present, and that allows him to continue the fantasy. Sofia's fate creates a parallel image. She spends the series trying to escape identities imposed by other people. Carmine labels her unstable, frames her as the Hangman, and sends her to Arkham. The Falcone family repeats the lie. Even after she is released, Gotham treats every movement and expression as evidence that the monster has returned. Sofia responds by reclaiming control. She kills the relatives who testified against her, adopts her mother's surname, creates the Gigante family, and burns the mansion associated with Carmine's rule. Each act attempts to destroy one part of the identity he constructed around her. Yet she cannot escape revenge. Sofia has several opportunities to leave Gotham. She has money, intelligence, and enough self-awareness to recognize that ruling the underworld won't restore the life Carmine stole. But Oz remains a living connection to both Carmine and Alberto. Until he suffers, she cannot imagine herself free. That fixation gives Oz time to defeat her. Sending Sofia back to Arkham is therefore his most Carmine-like act. He doesn't merely remove a rival. He uses Gotham's institutions to make his preferred narrative official. Sofia is blamed for the gang war, Bliss operation, and Crown Point explosion. Oz turns his own crimes into a case against a woman whom the city already finds easy to fear. Carmine defeated Sofia by controlling the story. Oz does exactly the same. This is one reason Batman's absence works, rather than feeling like a missing piece. The series isn't about whether a masked hero can stop a shipment or defeat a group of gangsters. It's about how Gotham produces villains through structures that continue operating in ordinary daylight. Judges, doctors, police officers, council members, prison guards, and wealthy families all contribute to the violence. Criminal power survives because legitimate power repeatedly finds it useful. Oz's final meeting with Councilman Haiti is more important to his future than defeating Sal Maroni in a tunnel. Haiti teaches him that respectable influence requires separation from visible criminality. Oz must become the man who provides information about crime rather than the man publicly associated with committing it. That arrangement creates the version of the Penguin capable of surviving alongside Gotham's political elite. Oz doesn't need politicians to approve of him personally. He needs them to profit from his existence. The show repeatedly connects physical height with this movement toward legitimacy. Oz begins in the damaged remains of the Iceberg Lounge, searching the abandoned rooms of a dead boss. He later retreats underground, building Bliss in tunnels beneath Crown Point. The lower he goes physically, the more independent his criminal power becomes. After winning, he rises into the penthouse. The journey from sewer-level tunnels to a tower overlooking Gotham mirrors his social climb. But the final bat signal above the skyline reminds us that visibility brings a new kind of danger. Oz could operate beneath the city, while the larger world barely knew he existed. Once he reaches the top, he becomes someone Batman can no longer ignore. The underground trolley system carries another hidden meaning. It is where Jack and Benny died, where Oz buried the truth about his childhood, and where he later creates the business that nearly makes him king. His adult empire grows in the same place as his first major betrayal. Oz doesn't consciously return to the tunnels to honor his brothers. He converts the location of their deaths into an asset. That pattern repeats throughout his life. Alberto's murder becomes a way to manipulate the Maronis. Castillo's loyalty to Sofia becomes a reason to frame him. Victor's grief becomes a recruitment opportunity. Francis's illness becomes part of Oz's story about being a devoted son. Crown Point's neglect becomes a foundation for political support. Other people experience tragedy. Oz discovers usable material. Even the ring traces this talent for converting history into power. It once belonged to Sal Maroni before Carmine took it as a symbol of victory. Alberto wears it as an inherited trophy. Oz removes it from Alberto's corpse, returns it to Sal to provoke a war, and finally claims it after Sal's death. The ring doesn't prove that Oz inherited either family's legitimacy. It proves that he survived long enough to collect the symbol after everyone else was gone. Sofia also uses symbols, but she believes names and objects can restore truth. She adopts Gigante to honor Isabella. She destroys the mansion to reject Carmine. She turns the mushrooms associated with Arkham into Bliss, transforming an instrument of control into a business she commands. The tragedy is that her symbols never fully free her from the past. Bliss still exploits vulnerable people by selling chemical escape. The Gigante organization still operates through intimidation and murder. Burning the mansion doesn't undo the harm done to Gia or the other victims created by Sofia's revenge. Both Oz and Sofia believe they can change the meaning of inherited violence by controlling it themselves. Neither succeeds. The difference is that Sofia remains capable of recognizing the contradiction. Her visit with Gia forces her to confront innocent suffering she caused. Her reaction doesn't absolve her, but it shows that guilt can still reach her. Oz treats guilt as an enemy to outtalk. When Sal dies from a heart attack, Oz shoots the body because reality denied him the heroic victory he imagined. When Francis says she hates him, He later replaces her voice with Eve's performance. When Victor calls him family, Oz kills him before that word can impose responsibility. Anything that contradicts his personal legend must be rewritten, removed, or destroyed. That makes Oz an especially effective villain for this version of Gotham. He doesn't see himself as a monster. He sees himself as the only honest participant in a dishonest city. He recognizes class inequality, political corruption, and the hypocrisy of wealthy families. Many of his criticisms are accurate, but truth in Oz's hands is never a moral guide. It's leverage. He doesn't want to end Gotham's exploitative system. He wants to become the person benefiting most from it. He tells neglected gangs that they deserve a seat at the table, then arranges for their leaders to be killed. He presents himself as Crown Point's champion while building an operation that eventually brings an explosion beneath the neighborhood. He offers Victor a route out of powerlessness, then erases him once the boy has served his purpose. This is what the finale means when the bat signal appears over the penthouse. Batman isn't being summoned merely because a new crime boss controls Gotham. He is being summoned because Oz has learned how to make criminal power look like public service, family devotion, and political cooperation. The man standing at the window is no longer Carmine Falcone's disrespected employee. He is something more difficult to defeat, a survivor who has persuaded himself that every betrayal was an act of love, every murder was an act of necessity, and every person he destroyed should have been grateful to stand beside him. The Penguin works because its creators understand that removing Batman from the center of Gotham doesn't make the city less dramatic. It changes where the camera looks. Matt Reeves, the Batman, often observes Gotham from rooftops, crime scenes, political institutions, and shadowed streets. The Penguin descends to the level of the people living beneath those symbols. Its Gotham is seen through damaged apartments, neighborhood restaurants, nightclub bathrooms, prison rooms, hospital corridors, warehouses, and abandoned tunnels. The city remains stylized, but the fantasy is supported by physical detail. Walls are damp. Streets remain covered with flood debris. Crown Point feels cold even before characters mention the broken electricity. That environment is crucial because Oz's rise would feel much less convincing in a clean city. He becomes powerful by entering spaces legitimate authority has neglected. Every unrepaired building and darkened apartment creates an opening for him. Gotham's decay isn't simply atmosphere surrounding the plot. It is the economic condition that makes the plot possible. Production designer Kalina Ivanov faced the challenge of continuing a Gotham largely established in a feature film shot in the United Kingdom while moving the series production into New York. Rather than reproducing every location from the Batman, the series expands the areas that film only suggested. Crown Point becomes a complete neighborhood with its own visual history. The Falcone estate represents old, insulated wealth. Oz's apartment uses decoration to expose his insecurity. The underground trolley station turns forgotten public infrastructure into the foundation of a criminal economy. Each environment tells us what its owner wants to believe. The Falcone mansion is filled with tradition, portraits, polished wood, and inherited authority. It suggests permanence, which makes Sofia's destruction of the family inside it feel like an attack on history itself. Monroe's offers another kind of fantasy: music, performance, elegance, and escape. Young Oz associates it with the future he promises Francis, while Francis remembers it as the place where she nearly arranged his death. Oz's apartment is more revealing because it tries too hard. The decorations, artificial luxury, clothing, car, and carefully displayed possessions don't express secure wealth. They express his idea of what wealth should look like. Oz wants every object around him to announce that he has escaped the position Gotham assigned to him. Then there is the penthouse. Visually, it fulfills his dream. Gotham glows beneath the windows. Francis has been carried above the streets, and Oz can finally look down on everyone who once looked down on him. but the room is emotionally empty. The expensive setting cannot hide the hospital equipment or make Francis speak. Production design gives Oz everything he described as a child, then reveals that the fantasy has become a prison. The same care extends to Oz himself. Colin Farrell's transformation began in The Batman, where prosthetic designer Mike Marino created a face so different from the actor's own that Farrell could disappear inside the character. For the series, the disguise had to withstand much greater scrutiny. Oz is no longer appearing for a handful of scenes. The camera remains close to him for hours, observing subtle reactions, sweat, exhaustion, fear, and moments when a lie forms before he speaks. The prosthetic work succeeds because it doesn't feel like a mask placed over a performance. It appears to have its own history. Oz's face seems shaped by age, weight, injury, stress, and years of unhealthy living. His damaged foot and distinctive walk affect his entire body. He doesn't simply limp when the story remembers that he has a disability. His movement alters how he turns, sits, fights, enters rooms, and attempts to appear physically threatening. Farrell builds the performance around those limitations rather than treating them as decoration. Oz frequently uses exaggerated confidence to occupy more space than his body naturally allows. He leans forward when persuading someone. He opens his arms as though welcoming an old friend even when he's preparing a betrayal. His voice can become intimate, threatening, wounded, or comic within the same conversation. He often speaks too much because silence would allow other people to define the moment. One of the performance's strongest details is the speed with which Oz changes emotional direction. He can appear sincerely moved by Victor's pain, then threaten him seconds later. He can panic, recognize what another person wants, and invent a persuasive lie before the fear has fully left his face. Farrell allows the audience to see the machinery operating without making Oz feel mechanical. The makeup makes him unrecognizable. The acting makes him familiar. Kristen Milioti faces the opposite challenge as Sofia. She isn't hidden beneath a physical transformation. Instead, much of Sofia's characterization depends on how other people interpret her visible behavior. The family watches the way she eats, breathes, dresses, and responds to questions, searching for proof that Arkham's version of her is still present. Milioti uses stillness as a form of pressure. Sofia can appear controlled while everyone around her becomes increasingly uncomfortable. A pause before answering often feels more threatening than shouting. When she does lose control, the performance carries the exhaustion of someone who has spent years being punished for every emotional reaction. The episode set in her past allows Milioti to create two versions of Sofia without making them feel like different people. Before Arkham, she moves with the confidence of a woman who believes her intelligence will eventually be rewarded. Afterward, confidence has become vigilance. She studies exits, motives, food, rooms, and expressions because institutional abuse taught her that danger often arrives disguised as concern. Her clothing also becomes part of that transformation. Sofia's wardrobe can be elegant, severe, theatrical, or deliberately unconventional. She refuses to dress like a quiet Falcone daughter seeking approval. Her appearance becomes another territory she controls after years in which Arkham controlled her body. Renzi Feliz gives Victor a quieter progression. At the beginning, Victor's stutter, posture, and frightened glances reveal someone attempting to disappear before danger notices him. As Oz rewards him, Victor begins dressing differently and holding himself with greater confidence. Yet the original teenager never vanishes completely. Even after killing Squid, Victor looks disturbed by what he is becoming. That surviving decency is what makes his ending painful. Victor's arc isn't the story of a naturally violent criminal discovering his talent. It's the story of a traumatized young man receiving attention at the exact moment he is most vulnerable. Feliz allows us to understand why Oz's world feels attractive even when its danger is obvious. Deirdre O'Connell's Frances is equally essential because she prevents Oz's mother from becoming a simple sentimental motivation. Frances can be loving, cruel, ambitious, frightened, confused, and fully aware of the terrible bargain underlying her relationship with her son. Her dementia adds vulnerability, but the series never reduces her to the illness. In moments of clarity, Frances can dominate a scene more completely than any gangster. Clancy Brown and Shohreh Aghdashloo give the Maronis the weight of an older criminal world. Michael Kelly makes Johnny Viti's arrogance feel like the product of surviving too long inside a protected organization. Carmen Igyogo gives Eve enough awareness to show that she understands Oz's fantasies better than he suspects. Theo Rossi's Julian remains intentionally unsettling because his tenderness towards Sofia can never be separated from his fascination with her trauma. The ensemble makes Gotham feel populated by people rather than supporting pieces arranged around a comic book villain. Music plays a similar role. Mick Giacchino's score maintains a connection to the grand, threatening language of the Batman while shifting towards something more unstable and intimate. Heavy themes support Oz's imagined importance, but the music also carries anxiety, grief, and the sense that his victories may collapse at any moment. The use of older songs creates another layer. Top Hat isn't simply a film Frances enjoys. Its elegant black and white fantasy becomes connected to the night. Oz allows his brothers to die. Music, dancing, and luxury repeatedly represent the beautiful life he believes will erase his past. By the finale, he is dancing with Eve in the penthouse while the truth has been pushed out of the room once again. Sound and visual effects are most noticeable when the city itself becomes violent. The flood's continuing damage, the destruction of Crown Point, and the explosion beneath the neighborhood make Gotham feel larger than the limited locations of a crime drama. Yet the spectacle remains connected to character decisions. The tunnel explosion matters not because a large section of the city collapses, but because Oz's secret empire has physically injured the community he claims to serve. That balance helped the series avoid becoming a smaller imitation of the Batman. It doesn't attempt to reproduce the film's scale every week. Instead, it concentrates resources around consequences. A nightclub sequence matters because it triggers Victor's memory. The Falcone mansion matters because it becomes Sofia's site of revenge. The trolley station matters because Oz's childhood crime and adult ambition occupy the same space. The production received 24 Emmy nominations in 2025 and won 9, including awards for prosthetic makeup, non-prosthetic makeup, costumes, hairstyling, visual effects, sound editing, sound mixing, musical score, and Kristen Miliotti's lead performance. Those honors reflect how completely the craft departments support the same idea. The Penguin isn't visually impressive in spite of being a character-driven crime story. Its performances, makeup, clothes, sets, sound, and music are the tools that make the character story believable. Every department helps create a Gotham where a ridiculous man can become terrifying. A feared killer can also be a framed victim, and a forgotten tunnel can contain both a childhood grave and the beginning of an empire. The result feels less like a side chapter designed to occupy time between Batman films and more like a complete criminal tragedy. But strong craft alone doesn't explain why the series generated such a powerful reaction. Its greatest achievement is also the source of its most uncomfortable question. Did the show make Oz too entertaining, or did it reveal how easily charisma can persuade an audience to keep hoping for a man long after he has shown exactly what he is? The Penguin earned strong critical attention because it delivered something franchise television often promises but rarely achieves: a story that expands an existing world without feeling like an advertisement for the next chapter. The Batman gives the series its starting conditions. Carmine Falcone is dead, Gotham is flooded, and the criminal order is unstable. But once those conditions are established, the show earns its own identity. Batman doesn't secretly guide every plot development. Familiar characters aren't paraded through scenes merely to generate recognition. Even the final bat signal functions less like a cameo and more like punctuation. It confirms that Oz has become important enough to enter a larger conflict, while allowing this story to end on its own terms. That independence is essential because Oz Cobb would be much less interesting if the series treated him only as a future opponent for Batman. Here, he is the center of a moral experiment. The audience spends 8 episodes close enough to understand his shame, disability, class resentment, humor, ambition, and devotion to Francis. We see why Victor follows him and why neglected gang leaders respond to his speeches. Then the finale asks whether understanding has quietly become sympathy. Victor's murder provides the answer. The show deliberately waits until Oz has almost everything before removing the last excuse for him. He isn't fighting for immediate survival when he kills Victor. No enemy is watching. Victor isn't threatening to expose him. Oz makes a calm decision that emotional attachment has become inconvenient. That choice retroactively changes the entire journey. Earlier moments of mentorship remain emotionally real, but they can no longer be mistaken for evidence that Victor might save him. Oz doesn't reject redemption because it is unavailable. He destroys the person offering it. The series is similarly intelligent about Sofia. It gives her enough interior life that she never becomes a conventional rival waiting to be defeated by the protagonist. For significant portions of the story, she appears more deserving of escape than Oz appears deserving of victory. Her history also complicates the simple question of whether she is a villain. Sofia commits terrible acts. She kills her relatives, executes VT, participates in a criminal drug operation, destroys Oz's underground base, and uses Francis's trauma as a weapon. The series never asks us to ignore those choices, but it also shows how those choices emerged from systematic betrayal. Carmine murders her mother, frames Sofia for his crimes, and uses family testimony to imprison her. Arkham then converts resistance into diagnostic evidence and abuse into treatment. Sofia becomes dangerous, partly because every institution capable of protecting her instead protects Carmine. That doesn't make her innocent. It makes her tragedy-specific. Oz understands the same corrupt system and reaches the opposite conclusion. Sofia wants to destroy the identity her father imposed on her, even when revenge keeps pulling her back. Oz wants to master the machinery Carmine used. By the finale, he has learned to control witnesses, politicians, police narratives, gang hierarchies, and public perception. Sofia attempts to escape Carmine. Oz becomes him. Some elements of the series are more familiar. The basic structure of rival crime families, stolen narcotics, prison deals, nightclub distribution, corrupt officials, and ambitious lieutenants belongs to a long tradition of gangster stories. Several of Oz's escapes depend on enemies leaving him enough time to improvise, and the sudden alliance of Gotham's smaller gangs works partly because the story needs his rise to accelerate before the finale. The series also creates a strange tension around Bliss. The drug is central enough to unite Sofia and Oz, reshape Gotham's street economy, and motivate a gang war. Yet its effect on ordinary users remains secondary. Bliss represents escape from trauma, particularly through its connection to Arkham, but the wider social damage of flooding Gotham with it receives less attention than the business struggle surrounding it. That limitation may be intentional. Oz doesn't care what Bliss does after the money reaches him. Still, exploring its consequences more deeply could have strengthened the claim that his empire poisons the same communities he pretends to defend. Even with those weaknesses, the character writing keeps the familiar crime machinery alive. The series understands that suspense doesn't require viewers to believe Oz will die. His survival is largely guaranteed by the larger Batman story. The real suspense comes from discovering what he will sacrifice next. First, he sacrifices strangers, then allies, then the neighborhood he claims to love. Finally, he sacrifices the possibility of ever being loved honestly. That progression is why the finale feels like an ending rather than an incomplete origin chapter. Oz has not reached the absolute limit of his future power, but his moral transformation is complete. The essential penguin now exists. He has the name, organization, political contact, wealth, penthouse, and carefully manufactured public story. More importantly, he has learned that controlling reality is less useful than controlling what people are willing to believe about it. Sofia's final position is less conclusive. She is back in Arkham, but Selina Kyle's letter introduces a relationship outside the family system Carmine controlled. The connection doesn't guarantee rescue. It simply prevents Sofia's story from closing in total isolation. That small possibility separates her ending from Oz's. Sofia loses her freedom, but may have discovered someone capable of recognizing her without relying on Carmine's version of events. Oz wins Gotham, but surrounds himself with performances. Eve imitates Francis. Francis cannot answer him. Victor is dead. His political allies value information, and his criminal allies value opportunity. He has defeated everyone who could challenge his story. He has also eliminated everyone who could confirm that any part of it was true. The final image captures the series perfectly. Oz dances in a tower above Gotham while the bat signal appears in the distance. He has reached the height he promised Francis, but his victory is already casting the shadow of the confrontation to come. Batman will eventually see a new criminal power rising in Gotham. What he may not immediately see is the frightened boy beneath the expensive suit, still trying to prove that the deaths of his brothers produced someone important. That hidden child doesn't make Oz less dangerous. It makes him dangerous in a way physical force alone cannot solve. Oz can absorb humiliation, survive defeat, and reinvent guilt as motivation. Every attempt to push him down gives him another grievance to sell. Every corrupt institution gives him another route upward. The Penguin succeeds because it refuses to confuse pain with goodness. Suffering may explain Oz, Sofia, Francis, and Victor, but it doesn't make their choices equal. Victor experiences loss and still wants connection. Sofia experiences betrayal and remains capable of guilt. Francis experiences grief and traps herself inside a bargain she can never emotionally survive. Oz experiences pain and decides that the entire world owes him repayment. That is what the series is really about. Not the creation of a colorful comic book gangster, but the creation of a man who converts every wound into permission. By the end, Oz Cobb has everything he wanted. Gotham should be terrified of what he will decide it still owes him. If you want more complete series journeys with the character motives, hidden logic, and endings brought together in one cinematic story, stay with Series Span Cinema.